Periapt of Absence is the sophomore full-length album from Mother of Graves, an Indianapolis, Indiana-based death doom metal band who are certainly qualified with melodic death doom metal as their primary general subgenre directive. We could throw in a little bit of the romanticist and gothic doom in there as well. It kind of goes hand in hand with the melodic, the era of melodic death doom metal that they're coming from. And if you reference Catatonia, early Catatonia, Anathema, and My Dying Bride from their death metal era, and certainly like Paradise Lost as a baseline, that kind of gets you to where their Peaceful 3 intentions come across. And otherwise, they've worked on a modernization of this sound in some sense, but also a very classic example of melodic death doom metal as it worked its way out of the early 90s. So if you're a fan of like the early Celestial Season demos, or you're a fan of the first November's Doom record, as well as their earlier band, you'll kind of get a sense from where this is coming from. And I think they've been very strong so far in terms of their first record, Where the Shadows Adorn, being it's kind of a record that lacked nuance in some ways, but it really captured the feeling of the subgenre and kind of a louder version of it. There are a lot of bands playing in this style, and I think that the thing that these guys do right is the death metal part of it, especially on the first record, where you could definitely feel they were attempting to infuse actual old school death metal that was kind of period appropriate, if you will, into those more melodic devices. And so the change here on this record is that they're indulging the gothic metal side of it a little bit more without resorting to clean vocals. So it's kind of that, not necessarily gothic era Paradise Lost, but it's not that tuneful in any sense, but there's definitely a death metal approach to it, and one that needs to go places to remain interesting. So we'll get to a clip here and get a sense for the sound of the album, and I'll kind of explain what I mean by that in terms of variation. So those who are a fan of melodic death doom metal in the mid-90s, you'll remember that when Opeth showed up, a lot of fans totally turned and went in that direction. That romanticist sound and the unique vocal timbre and a lot of their elaborate progressive death metal compositions that have developed over time really took a lot of the same cues from melodic death doom metal, and the way that it had built itself up from just being a kind of a goth metal influenced thing. And people kind of took that turn towards more interesting song types, and not so many bands sounded like My Dying Bride anymore. And I think that's kind of a little bit of the turn that they're taking on this record. They're not becoming a progressive death metal band in any sense. They're leaning towards more interesting combinations of various chords, different little hits of dissonance in there, while they're still maintaining the general early Catatonia feeling there, which appeals to me. The first Catatonia record is one of my favorite of all times. I could say the same about both October Tide records that started out their career. There's a lot that I really like that this record references, and kind of brings some death metal in there too, in a way that I find very authentic and melancholic. And I think that they've done everything right in terms of generating interest throughout this full record and making sure that it's all entertaining. The second half isn't quite as eventful as the first half, but it still has something to say all the way through. Now, the only thing is that for me, it takes a little bit extra to reach that point where a band is emotionally resonant. And I didn't find, despite trying and listening quite a few times and reading some of the lyrics eventually, I never felt that point where I was really emotionally attached to the moment in any of this. And I don't think there's a way that this band could do that, because there is a bit more of a referential basis to their sound, because nostalgia kind of takes over where emotion would otherwise, and that's not really a fault. It's just kind of where the style of certain types of extreme metal go over time. Overall, this is a very strong record. It is one that finds its hook, but never rests on it too long, and never fully gets to the point of completely sappy or it never loses its death metal appeal to the point where it becomes gothic rock. For me, that's a high recommendation. I think this is a very appealing record to a broad audience, whether it's the nostalgic feelings for the early Peaceful 3 sound, or you're just interested in something that's Catatonia-esque. There's a lot of people who love that stuff, and myself included, and I think they do it in a way that they're refining it and changing it into their own thing over time, and I think this is a good step into that. I think there's a lot they could do with this sound, but I just hope they keep it death metal because they're pretty good at it. I like the way they've worked in the heavier vocals and the variation of such, as well as just having riffs. The fact that this record has riffs is mind-blowing because there's so many records in this style that you really can't manage much more than a pop metal hook with a basic rhythm guitarist. So they're exceptional in that way, and I think that it'll be an appealing record for most people in that sense. So see what you think, see what kind of effect it has on you. It releases today on October 18th, and go ahead and read my review for more in-depth thoughts on the whole thing.